Michael Frassetti was required to prepare an offense incident report regarding the April 2008 incident to which he was the responding officer. He has testified under oath on numerous occasions that he completed that report, electronically signed it, and sent it off to the server. Two experts have testified at this evidentiary hearing, Mike Denowith and J.P. Morales. They both have testified that they have reviewed the system, that they have reviewed the server log, and that no completed offense incident report by Michael Frassetti is contained within the system. For a reason that will only be known to Michael Frassetti, instead of just acknowledging that he hadn't prepared a required report, Officer Frassetti decided to lie about it. He lied about it under oath at the internal affairs investigation. He lied about it again at the predetermination hearing. And he's lied about it again on the two hearings held in this formal evidentiary hearing. He's offered no expert or anybody knowledgeable in computer systems to refute the testimony of J.P. Morales and Mike Denowith that the system absolutely cannot lose a report in the way Michael Frassetti says it happened. A law enforcement officer lying to his supervisors over the discharge of his required responsibilities is conduct reprehensible of a law enforcement officer and is not condoned by the City of Venice. And it constituted more than ample just cause to terminate his employment. And we've done so. There have been no allegations that we violated in any way the collective bargaining agreement or the personnel procedures or rules or the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights in the discharge of Michael Frassetti. The only thing they've done is they've requested a formal evidentiary hearing to put us to the task of showing by a preponderance of the evidence that the city had just cause to terminate Officer Frassetti. And we have shown, way beyond a preponderance of the evidence, that the story being told by Michael Frassetti is absolutely impossible. You'll recall, and you'll have a transcript of the testimony, but J.P. Morales with SunGuard, the creator of the software program, he testified to the number of applications that he has overseen, his work in developing the program. And he says, nowhere has it ever happened that a completed and signed off offense incident report has ever disappeared in thin air as Michael Frassetti would have you believe. I believe we've carried the burden. I think there is more than ample just cause for the City of Venice to terminate this employee. I would ask you to affirm, and if you review, and I know you will, when you review the testimony, what have they offered to counter the city's case? Well, they paraded 6 or 8 officers who testified, and these are good officers. But what did they testify about? Did any of them ever complete an offense incident report, electronically sign it, send it to the server, and have it disappear? No, none of them testified to that. They testified that fields would be vacated and data would be deleted. But nowhere, not one of them, did they ever say that their completed and signed off report vanished in thin air. So I believe that they haven't shown that this is even possible. They certainly, and I thought for sure that between our presentation on June 30th and the continuation of this hearing approximately 2 months later, that we would have seen an expert on their behalf that says, well, wait a minute, I'm familiar with all the glitches that a computer system can have, and I've looked at the software program in the city's hardware, and of course this can happen. It's an anomaly that's easily explained. They've offered none of that. They have not refuted in any way the expert testimony of Mike Denowith and J.P. Morales. And I think, again, way beyond the preponderance of the evidence, we have shown just cause to terminate this employee for all of the charges contained within our exhibit book, which were part of the IA investigation findings and also the statement of charges in the predetermination hearing. And that we would ask you to affirm the discharge of Michael Frassetti.
If Mr. Anderson had been to Holland and nobody else had, he would have to argue that Holland doesn't exist because he hasn't proven that it exists. See? And there can be a first time for everything. All we know from the evidence, the unrefuted, the sensible, the logical evidence, is that this computer system has glitches repetitively. Just because non-experts such as officers can't come in here and say, I know exactly, have an identical situation, doesn't mean it couldn't have happened for the first time, number one. Number two, the most telling refutation that Mike Frassetti didn't make any report comes from Exhibit A, pages 11, 12, 13, 14, and so forth, where you have an actual report from the Venice Police Department containing information that would have been supplied at the scene, such as persons' names, descriptions of them, this kind of thing, aliases, things like that, their race, all that kind of stuff, birth date, all that information, none of that is pretty crystal clear. The dispatcher doesn't put that in because obviously how could they? That had to come from an officer on the scene. Here's the report. Now, whether it was preserved in the proper form in the computer system, we can't prove that it was. But they can't prove Michael Frassetti didn't send a report when their own documentation shows that the information normally contained in such a report was sent. And at one point or another was in the computer system. That's the most important glitch in their case. The other thing is, and this goes a little bit to the climate at the Venice Police Department. This was not done properly, this investigation. First and foremost, if indeed a report on 4808 was not made, the normal practice would have been for Officer Frassetti's supervisor to inform him the following day, hey, we don't have a report. Didn't happen. Odd that it didn't happen. That's what normally would have happened. One doesn't automatically leap to the conclusion, oh, he's lying, he never did it. Lieutenant Rose did. Lieutenant Rose never bothered to give the benefit of a doubt and started his investigation the very first time he interviewed Michael Frassetti. Michael Frassetti was accused. Now, it's odd to me that the person who makes the accusation is also the investigator and did the recommendation to the chief. I mean, he dodges it and says, well, I wasn't really the jury on the case. But he certainly made the recommendation to the chief. And we all know how agencies work, that if you can expect the chief to go along with your recommendation. There's a quality of independence in that analysis, and there's also a quality of going along with what your supervisory staff recommends. Lieutenant Rose's fingerprints are all over this, for whatever reason. Now, we also know that for reasons I don't know why, all of us that are familiar with computers, we've all had, say, even lost emails. I'm not a computer geek. I couldn't tell you why that happens. It's darn annoying when it does. Somebody can come in and tell me, well, it's not lost. Say, oh, it's in the system, and say, oh my God, that's good to know. Doesn't mean I'm responsible for it's not being where it should have been. And that's the issue that they really don't get to with Mike Frassetti. They can't show that he was the one who was responsible for it, but they blamed him for it. The passwords are not protected. You heard officers say that everybody knows it's first initial, last name, or 5 letters, and people know that generally. People can access reports. The supervisors themselves can actually change data. The Venice Police Department would want that to be ignored, but the supervisors can change data because they know using somebody else's username. I can't prove that it did happen that way, but I can certainly say that the evidence doesn't show Michael Frassetti did anything wrong when their own documentation shows the information that he would have supplied in the report.